how far back people go. How many of you have been doing PHP, say, 5 years or more? Okay, let's push that back about 10 years. Okay, thinning out a little. How about 15 years? Okay. So my first experience with PHP was about 15 years ago, when version 3 came out. At the time, it was awesome because now you could actually not just do static HTML pages. You could do stuff that's a lot more interesting, right? So that's kind of where I came from. At least that's where I kind of got into PHP. I do participate in the PHP user group. They meet usually about every third Thursday at the Needle, which is basically at the point of the mountain. If you know where the Center 7 data center is, they meet there. They have a phpu.org. If you want to find out when the next meeting is, highly encourage participation on that. So, PHP and MongoDB. So, when everyone says LAMP, everyone thinks, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Pretty much, right? And that was me for a long time. You have a database and you have a website, it's going to be MySQL and PHP. That's just what I was exposed to. I never really saw much other options. Then I went to work with this company, and they had this little system that stored all their files. It was their document store. They used MongoDB. And the guy wrote it in Ruby, but he was going away. They needed changes. I didn't know enough Ruby at the time, so I had to rewrite it with PHP. And there, I kind of opened my eyes, and there's a lot of things that MongoDB gives you. So I kind of want to expose you. This is introductory. I'm not going to assume a lot. If you have questions, stop me now. I don't want to get 3 slides down the road and have you then answer your question. So I figure that most of you are at least passingly familiar with the LAMP idea, right? So let's go compare MySQL with MongoDB. So the top part is very similar. It's a service running on the system. It can have more than one database in it. Where it kind of starts changing and where it makes a difference is everyone's used to the relations, the tables, right? It looks like an Excel spreadsheet thing, columns, rows. That's what everyone knows. With tables, you have like a fixed fields. You have every row is going to have the same fields because that's how it is. With collections, every row could contain totally different data. Probably not a good idea, but it could be totally different. MongoDB is not going to enforce your schema on you. Okay, sometimes they call it schemaless. It's not going to force that. And that could be good and bad. Okay. Now, so each row is a document. It's a JSON document. If any of you played or seen a JSON object, every row is a JSON object, and it can be totally different. I don't recommend, you want to have some design consistency, but the system will not force it on you. So that gives it flexibility. How many of you ever heard of a person called Sandy Metz? Maybe a little. More known in the Ruby world, which I got exposed to later. But she says, when you start in work or a project, you'll never know less than you know right now. But which is the idea is that sometimes you start a process and your business comes to you and says, we need a system to do this. But they've never actually done it before. And they don't even really know what the process is going to be. They just don't. They have some ideas, but they're still trying to work it out. Right? You're trying to code it, which is always a lot of fun if you've had to deal with that. So with MongoDB, now you're not, if you decide later on when you want to add this field, change this, changing table schema, it's doable. But sometimes you find yourself, painting yourself into a corner, right? How many of you ever felt like your project, like you're running, every change you make makes it so you can't make other choices or limits the choices you make. MongoDB will kind of help you with that a little, using that. And maybe down the road when you finish your project and you finally figured out what your process is, you'll switch it back to like a traditional database. But maybe early on, a database that doesn't force a schema on you might be a really good thing. Does that make sense? And while you're figuring things out, now, like for example, this looks like a JSON object, right? But notice that could you have done this in a single row in a traditional database and had like normalized data, not had something really kind of screwy, like where you had 2 phone numbers embedded, with that user. That'd be hard, or really you couldn't do it right that way. But MongoDB, that's totally fine. So another thing about MongoDB, how many of you have ever set up, I know you're mostly coders, so you probably didn't have to do the admin part of this, and set up MySQL with replication? Okay, I'll show you a few of you. Was it fun? Okay, obviously, there we have our answer, right? I just say like this, I did it, we have at work, we have a MySQL database, we got replication working. It was not a fun experience. With MongoDB, the word Mongo is actually a subset of the word humongous. It was meant to scale. When they built the system, Mongo, what it was is like, we want to scale horizontally and vertically. So horizontally, we're thinking we have replica sets. So that what happens is, that each member of the replica set, you'll have maybe one that's actually taking the inputs and it'll make sure that all of them commit the changes. But setting up replica sets in MongoDB compared to MySQL is a lot easier. And it's meant to. In fact, if you read the documentation on MongoDB, in production, they don't recommend doing anything without as a replica set. So one machine burns to the ground, your data set still lives. In fact, they'll have an election and select another primary, and you'll keep running, even though a machine just straight failed on you. It'll keep working. So, now vertical scaling. Vertical scaling, or in MongoDB, is called sharding. Say your data set gets big, gets really big, and having that on a single physical machine, all your data, it comes to a point where hard drives don't get, where it gets expensive, where you have to buy really expensive hardware to try to scale for a large set. At some point it can. With sharding, what happens is you can split your data set into multiple machines. And so you can still have this huge set, still using relatively cheap hardware and sharding. So it really can scale for you. That's maybe another really big thing on MongoDB. So multiple replica sets and sharding. Now, to obviously, I'm assuming that how many, actually, I should have asked this earlier, have used MongoDB in the past? Okay, actually quite a few. I'm going to assume, though, for the benefit of those that didn't, that this is your first time. This is your first rodeo, right? So getting it installed, assuming Linux, that is where you're going with this. Okay, yeah, I'm assuming that most people are either going to be drinking CentOS, Red Hat Kool-Aid, or the Ubuntu Debian Kool-Aid. And these are basically the commands you'll need to install the database and what PHP needs to be able to get up with MongoDB with PHP. Not that hard, really. Now, I have part of the demo here. I have an app that I've got PHP and MongoDB up, and it's a Vagrant environment. I'll include the GitHub location. You can download my Vagrant up, play with it. I want you to play with it. Because if this is new to you, playing with something real can help you get more familiar with it. So, backup and restore, you PHP, MySQL dump, right? MySQL, everyone's familiar with that. You played with it for a little while. You can do backups, you can do restores. It's the tools still there, the command line tools. If you need to have that functionality, yeah, it still exists. Now, how many of you use MySQL Workbench on your PHP stuff? I use it on my MySQL stuff. I have a Magento environment. It's nice to have that little GUI to use that. How many of you used PHP MyAdmin or something like that? Yeah. There are tools, and you can also command line it for those of you who do that, right? So Mongo, JSON object. When you're in the Mongo command line environment, it's going to all your commands are going to feel like you're working with JavaScript, and you are. It's really Java. If you're familiar with JavaScript, the command line environment is going to feel pretty natural for you. Sometimes it's really nice just to shoot in the command line. I'm looking for this one thing. I don't want to spin up this bigger, heavier tool to get to my data. I have a personal preference. I really like Gainus, and in my demo, we'll show you. There are some other tools, but they always seem really awkward and hard to read, at least personally. Maybe they're better and I'm just screwed up. But I like Gainus. I think it's really gives you a clean way to move through and look at your Mongo database on the back end. So, and I recommend that. Now, does anyone not know when I say CRUD, what we're going to? Create, read, update, delete, like basic database type of activities. Okay, so we're going to go over that. To create an item in MongoDB, here's an example in PHP. Basically, we connect, we select a database, and if the database doesn't exist and you select it, well, it'll say, I'm assuming that you're going to create it. So that doesn't stop it. And then you select a collection, row, like basically would be equivalent to a table, right? And then what you do is you can create, basically, we use arrays. It treats arrays, when it pushes it in, it'll end up in JSON objects inside, or documents inside MongoDB. So you just create what you want to put in there, then insert what is the data structure. It's actually easier, at least personally, if you're wanting to think object-oriented, this seems a little less painful than native MySQL. How many of you have ever used what they call ORM? For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it stands for Object Relation Mapper. And basically, what happens is you have your data in your database, and you have your code. Your code, everything's objects if you're doing your object-oriented thing. And what it does is it's able to pull things out of and put things into the database and have it feel like it's objects. So you're not really feeling that, select star whatever, right? Because that's painful, I'll admit. It's not fun. There are what they call ODMs. I know one guy that's working on creating one of those for Doctrine for MongoDB. But it's not nearly as awkward. That's another thing I'd say about that. So creating, putting something in the system. Now getting stuff out, right? But then got to get it out. Again, the top part of the code's just connecting. And then what happens is you're going to see that you're going to say find. And in this case, when I do find with no, you can actually put like criteria inside find. Like I only want these things. But then once you find it, you can sort it. You can say I only want 20. You can do these commands, and it really feels object oriented. It's not awkward. Then you can just basically iterate, and that's what that bottom little code sample is, where you got your links in the top, and now all you are is iterating through showing it. And I find the awkwardness of getting stuff out MongoDB beats native MySQL from at least usability, in my opinion, right? Now, you're obviously going to need to change some information. So, in this example, I'm sorry I'm going fast. If you want me to slow down, please do. Basically, what you connect again, you get your reference, you make some changes, have some stuff, clean things up, and then what I do is I grab. Let's see here. I have to actually specify the object, but then that's what I'm doing down here. Sorry, I got disoriented. But I have to get my link ID because something already exists in database, so I have to pull that back, and then I have my changed object. And along bottom part is I'm going to query that link or that identifier, and here's my change. It's been a while since I actually looked at that one. It's not hard. You can make multiple record changes at a time. So that's the danger, right? Even with MySQL, is that if you aren't careful, you can step all over your data. So as I do this, usually what I'll do is I'll do reads, make sure I'm only getting one. Usually if I'm doing a query on the Mongo ID, which is a unique identifier, your chances of stepping on data unintentionally, that minimizes that. And the same kind of dangers, again, for removing data from the system. Again, for me, the way I've solved that problem for myself is I just get the identifier. And when I'm doing removing, I'm going to only remove on identifiers. Maybe there might be some situations where it'd be more efficient to do it otherwise, but for me, that's how I do it. Now, data modeling. Obviously, you've seen JSON objects. They're a little different, right? And you've got to put your stuff together. You've got to create your objects and change their values differently than what you're used to. There's no way to really do joins in MongoDB. Not really the way you do it in relational databases. Because every object may have different fields. You can't count on those fields being there. You can probably count on the Mongo ID, and everything else you really can't count on. So joins, no. Now, one thing is a weak entity. A weak entity, for those of you, because I know I'm using terms, is basically something that exists in your system, but wouldn't exist outside, wouldn't be meaningful without some other entity. For example, an address. If you don't have an address for no person, just isn't useful. So, for example, you have a person, and you can embed those addresses, multiple addresses. So this can be like the one-to-many, right? Does that make sense? So this is way I've seen a lot of people use it. We have a MongoDB system that we have a lot of embedded objects. One danger is that one object, which might be central to your idea of your system, they can tend to grow. Like, hey, we want this attribute. Oh, we want more and more. And it becomes what we call a God object, where basically, this object is gotten huge because it's got all these sub entities, and that's probably not good modeling. We probably didn't do as good a design work. And then what happens is those God objects usually end up getting created because you had a good idea, it was schemed well initially, and then said, oh, I want this, and oh, I want this, and pretty soon that thing just grew. It was a lot of fun. We're beating it down though, we're fixing that. Now the thing is, sometimes you'll have relationships where one entity can stand on its own, a non-weak entity, right? And so you can do references. to another object. Like say, this is a link, but you can actually reference another, one of the users. And the thing about it is you really can't join. Now so if you pull this the link, now you got to do another query to get the user. Any questions? Sorry, it looks like you're running. So that I know you join. Once you get used to joins, it's good. But in this case, you're going to have to work a little differently. Now aggregation. What happens is sometimes you want to get in a query, you want to get like add total numbers of some type of thing, right? You want to like add like how many links have the tag community, for example. There are operations that allow you, and I know this is introductory, so I'm not going deep into it, but where you can actually do, first give me everything, then I'm only looking for these, now let's do some summation. So that it can do aggregation. There are ways to do it. I've seen it where mostly you're doing it with inside MongoDB. I've seen some where you're doing it inside PHP. Personally, I think the MongoDB doesn't look, when you're doing it inside MongoDB, it's not as awkward. It seems to be a little less complicated. Personal opinion. By the way, if you really want to get into deep into MongoDB, tomorrow there are 2 presentations on MongoDB, like introductory and advanced. So if I'm not going to try to take you down a rabbit hole. There are plenty of rabbit holes tomorrow. So you can do aggregation. Now, how many of you that have played with MongoDB have ever worked with GridFS? Okay, good. There's something new. What GridFS allows it to do is basically inside MongoDB, you are storing binary data, like files. And what it'll do is you can put files in, get files out. We use our document store at my place, and we actually use GridFS for that. You can basically, there's some PHP command, talk to MongoDB, hey, I want to put this file in. And then you can pull files out. It has actually two collections. One is for the files, for the metadata of the file. And then there's another collection for the chunks. There is a physical size limitation for a chunk in the GridFS, but it just, the database, or not so much the database, but the PHP drivers will actually pull those out, assemble them, and deliver those to you. But, yes, question?
So what is that physical size limitation? Because that's what I was curious about, because I know Mongo itself has a limitation on the documents. So.
Yeah, the size limitation depends on if you're a 32-bit or 64-bit system. But I'm assuming that most people are 64-bit, right? And last time I checked, I think it was like 16 megabytes. I'm not 100% sure, I don't have it memorized. The thing about it is it doesn't matter what the size limitation is, it'll just create more chunks.
Okay, so it handles that for you?
It handles that for you, yes. If that's a question, because I don't remember, I don't have it memorized, but what it'll do is it'll just have one file, but hold multiple chunks as it needs to. And then when you pull it back out, you using PHP with this GridFS will never actually have to know about the details, because the drivers will do the work for you.
And that works with the replication and the sharding also?
Yes, yes it does. Yeah. And we, right now, our document store, we're using Mongo GridFS, we're about a terabyte. And it runs fast, no issues. It's been, a project is good when it does the thing you do, and you just like 6 months later and you haven't looked at it, it just works. That's a sign of a good project. And we use that, so. Now, I have an example project we're actually going to show here. I'll bring it up on the screen. But But this is actually, my link to it is here. Please download it, please play with it. But the idea, probably not going to work well right now with the bandwidth. Vagrant, when you Vagrant up, it has to download the image. So it'll take a minute. But what this is an example. I'm good. But what this is a Vagrant environment. It will start up like an Ubuntu, run our little application, and it will show kind of how we create links and everything. So let me switch to that. And bring up my client. Am I mirroring? Okay. I have to blow this up to get this bigger. Okay, let's try to. Okay. So I'll just play through the app a little here. So Mongo links, I've populated it with a number of little links that I've added in. And what it is basically it's a little like a bookmark app, right? A little bookmark web app. So to get in, log in. Let's see, I'll just get in here. We'll just play with it first, and then I'll show you the Mongo underneath it. So let's see here. Do I need to make it a little bigger? Let's see. And we'll go. And so we have where we can add new links. We have our current links. We can edit a link. We can remove it, all the normal activity. As a the tags where this is where I do some aggregation where I'll take the count. I'll get all the tags and then the count on the tags. So nothing major complicated, but it's using MongoDB. And like I mentioned, and I've got this actually up here, Genghis. Well, it's also a Ruby and PHP app. But what it will do is you can go in and you'll see what databases exist. And this is inside my Vagrant. And I think local is automatic. And test and admin are just there. They're always there when you bring up MongoDB. But inside Mongo links, I've got my links, which is all obviously my list of links. I've actually got session management inside MongoDB. Now, so the one benefit of that is if you had multiple front-end servers, they all point to MongoDB, you don't have to worry about the session a little bit, right?
Quick question.
Yes?
On the previous screen, it had the size of your Mongo links. The collection is like 100 and something megs, 192 megs.
Yeah.
But then when you went into it, the sizes don't match.
Yeah.
So what's being reflected there?
That's a good question. And I don't know if I can answer that one.
Size cap. You're allowed a certain position holding.
So
I'll have to look into it. Honestly,
it's like reserves. It's,
Reserves.
Allocated versus used.
Oh, okay.
yeah. So that makes sense. So you're in, right, and you have your links, and if you look in here, you see these JSON objects, and each item has its, and you can edit, and that's another nice thing, inside like MongoDB, you can, or inside Genghis, you can actually go in and change. So, I don't find, there is a tool that's similar to MySQL Workbench, but in my dev environment, if I have Genghis running, as far as I'm concerned, this is as good as working in that environment. For me, I haven't felt the need to use a different tool. It's personal preference, but so
if you were to, because it's all JSON, right? So
Yeah.
if you were to do something wrong when you save it? Is it going to point out that you left out a comma or a bracket or anything like that?
It'll take any long form JSON. So as long as you can make a mistake. Sorry, it was an error. But you can make a mistake, and as long as it's well formed JSON, it won't complain.
Okay.
Which is actually not a good thing, right? Sometimes you want it to complain. But the thing is, you know, if it's not well formed JSON, yes, it will say, you know, no, not taking it, right? So, good question. So going back, we have links, session, and in this case, I've only got one person connected, myself, right? And then tag count. This is actually the result of an aggregation. What happens every time you visit the tag page, I actually update that that table. That's kind of a derived table, is my tags, tag count. And then users, again, I've only got one. I've hashed my password. I'm not LinkedIn, so. Well, so. But the thing is, I honestly think you searching for things and you navigating and editing, I really like Angus. If you know, and it's a web tool. Let's see, get back in here. And so let's add a link. Anyone have a website they want to add? Any ideas?
Hulu? Did you add
Hulu? Hulu. Okay. Is it secure or hold?
Yeah.
And video, that's right.
Yeah.
Watch. And then I said videos, entertainment. So, you know, like it shows the most recently added ones at the top. But if we go to tags, what it will do is it actually runs aggregation, and now it'll update this. Like there's only one that has videos. So if you want to just look up community stuff, let's go here. And you say Utah PHP user group. Apparently Utah Valley University has decided that PHP user group is a hacker group, which I find absolutely amazing when you go back. And DC 801, which is definitely a hacker group, yeah, you can go there. Go like that.
That's cool. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's awesome. But, yeah. But what I want to do and why I created this is obviously nothing major. Is I want to give you something that you can go home, download, Vagrant up, and play with. Add some features. I thought, well, you could maybe add categories or maybe put pictures where you could like see the user GridFS, use Mongo, PHP and Mongo GridFS to upload the pictures into the database instead of storing on your local file system because that's got its own set of headaches. So I built this knowing that there's a lot more that can be done with it. But I wanted to leave it here because I want you to go download and play with it. Any questions? I know we're kind of early, but I know I don't want to compete with lunch because I will lose. I know how that works. But if you have any questions,
Obviously, you wasn't installing Mongo version for PHP.
you know, obey those commands. Let me get back to that. Here, let me go up here. Play this. Yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, that's it. Those
I
commands.
only installed the 5.3 or 5.4 version of PHP because I've been using, I actually found that I have to compile PHP if I want the newest one, and I always run new.
Yeah, if you're always chasing the carrot, right?
Yeah.
Then you know you can.
Because, you know, the speed improvements and PHP at PM runs really well with Nginx.
Yeah. I like this. I understand why people chase the carrot. I absolutely get that. The thing, and if you want to, yeah, you're going to be compiling stuff, and that's just what it is. What I did is I want to show this because this doesn't take people down a rabbit hole, right? This is an introduction. I'm not going to try to make people, go through some really awkward things. Now, one nice thing, and if we can close out of this, along that, your questions. And let me just find my cursor again.
So there are repos too, by the way, that have the latest versions of LAMP. Well, I say that it's PHP and MySQL, I know that. So, because I've compiled and you end up never patching and,
Yeah, there's.
Well, with PCI concerns, they go after you on everything, even the PHP you have.
Yes. If for this Vagrant environment, like you get there, there is. Actually, I'm one layer in. Okay, that's fine. I wasn't seeing it. I use Puppet and to install the PHP modules. I just I do my apt-get update, and then I just install these. So the nice thing about that is if you get comfortable with Puppet, and that's kind of from the earlier talk, you can, once you get familiar with it, adding modules or managing that becomes easy. And one nice thing, I know this is slightly off topic, is when you're using Puppet, if you build your files the right way, then say you go from production to development, because Vagrant is definitely not production. Please, no. Okay. But if you build your files right, you can reuse a lot of your Puppet scripts into production, into your deployment. And that's actually really convenient. I know it's off topic, but yeah. Other questions? Go ahead.
So with the GridFS stuff, have you found any real deficiencies with it at all, or has it been pretty much plug and play?
It's one of those systems that just works for us. In my personal, I've been with my company for 2 years, and GridFS just works for us.
Is there much difference between that and dealing with files on the actual file system in PHP?
The benefit of that is, say for example, say you want to run multiple front-end instances, right? Your load balancing, right?
Yeah.
Say, if it's in a database, they all share immediately. You're not having to do rsync or anything to make sure every instance has that, or do like sharing a file system. So, that works. Like we can have multiple instances sitting on the same database, serving all those files. And that's good. Now, you can, if you're in AWS or something, just use like the store, like S3, or I think in Azure they call it Blob Store or something. But the cloud, some of those cloud solutions might actually be more what you're going for in some cases.
And the Mongo backup, it captures the binary also with it?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah, it grabs everything. Like when you back it up, all those chunks also get backed up. Yes. Any other questions? Well, I hope this was a good introduction. I hope it was enough that if you're interested, you can play with it now. You have an idea and you have something to play with to get you into MongoDB. Thank you for coming.